Hey y'all, welcome to a new What's for Dinner, the last one of 2022. So, the last couple of weeks, I have just been soaking up Christmas break with the kids, enjoying all of the Christmas festivities. So, that was a nice little break from posting, but that did not mean that I stopped cooking. So, I'm going to be showing some of the meals that I made during that chaotic but good time. I went with recipes that I have made in the past that we all really enjoyed. So, in today's video, I will be sharing 5 tried and true family favorites. So, first up, I made our favorite chicken noodle soup recipe. I have made this so many times and it is always a hit. So, as you can see, it is done in the Instant Pot, but if you don't have one, you can definitely do it on the stovetop. So, I hit the saute function on the pot. I wait for it to get really hot. Then I add in a couple tablespoons of olive oil and then I drop in my bone-in chicken thighs. I had already seasoned the other side off camera, so now I'm just getting the top seasoned and I just do salt, pepper, onion, and garlic powder. So I'm just trying to sear the tops and the bottoms of the chicken. I'm not trying to cook it all the way through just yet, but doing it this way makes the chicken have so much extra flavor. So as soon as I got those seared for a few minutes on each side, I take that out and remove it to a separate plate. Then I add in just a touch more of olive oil and I'm going to start adding in some chopped celery. Normally I just add in like 2 to 3 stalks of celery for this recipe, but sometimes I just get tired of having leftover celery from recipes hanging out in my fridge, and we don't eat just like plain celery by itself. So I just cut up the whole bunch and threw it in, and I have no regrets. Turned out super good in this, but I did get those seasoned with a little bit of salt, pepper, and onion powder and saute those for just a few minutes. If you like actual onion, you can definitely saute one in with the celery in place of the onion powder, but you definitely want to add in a little bit of chicken broth to the bottom of the pot. That will deglaze all of those little flavorful bits from the bottom and get that released, and then nothing will like burn to the bottom. But at this point, I'm going to start adding that chicken back on in, as well as the juices that kind of accumulated on that plate. And I'm going to start getting my chicken broth added in. So you will need a total of 6 cups of the chicken broth. I'm also going to add in a few bay leaves as well as some chicken bouillon powder. This is going to make that broth like extra rich and flavorful. I did 3 teaspoons. I've also done the paste in the past. It's also really good. But at this point, I remembered that I completely forgot to add in my minced garlic. I should have done that when I was sauteing the celery, but at least I didn't forget it altogether. So got my lid added on and my valve set to sealing, and I let that cook for 7 minutes. So here it is after that cook time. The chicken is perfectly cooked through, and I'm just getting that removed from the broth and getting that placed on a separate plate so that it can slightly cool down, and I'll get that shredded and pulled from the bone. Normally when I make this, I do it with fresh carrots and I saute it in with the celery and let it cook with the chicken, but I ran out of fresh carrots. I didn't want to run to the store for one ingredient, so I did a can of carrots for the first time in this, and it turned out really good. So I just added in later on in the cook time, as you can see, and I brought this up to a boil, added in 3 cups of some dry egg noodles, and I let that cook anywhere from 4 to 5 minutes. And at this time, I took the time to fish out those bay leaves. They have done their job. I have no use for them now. And I'm also going to go ahead and add in that cooked and shredded chicken. So I'm just going to give that a final stir, and as soon as those noodles were fully cooked, I just finished it off with some salt, lots of black pepper, and I do quite a bit of dried parsley. I really like the way that looks throughout this soup, but that is it. This is actually a pretty quick meal to throw together, and I just love the way it makes my house smell. It is just such a cozy and comforting meal. When I think back to my childhood on those cold, like snowy days, I think chicken noodle soup, and like I said, this is just the best recipe. We just love it, especially my kids. Everything just gets cooked so perfectly, and the chicken is so like tender and juicy, and the flavor is just amazing. We like to serve it with a side of grilled cheese, and this is one of those meals that's really good as leftovers. My family, there's not a lot of things they like leftover, but this is one of them, so we definitely had it the next day for dinner as well. Next up, I am making cheeseburger stuffed shells. This is such a simple but incredible recipe that we have not had in a while. So I'm going to start by browning up 1 pound of ground beef. I'm going to season that very well with salt, black black pepper and onion powder. I'm also going to add in a good amount of minced garlic. I was at the bottom of that jar, so I just decided to finish it off. So I got every little bit of that out, and I was going to cook that garlic in with the beef for a couple of minutes. And as soon as I see no more pink, I'm going to drain off the grease and get that added back to my skillet. Next, I'm going to add in 1 can of petite diced tomatoes that I have drained the juice from. I'm also going to add in several dashes of Worcestershire sauce, as well as a few tablespoons of ketchup and a couple tablespoons of mustard. So we got those classic cheeseburger flavors going on, and definitely don't skip out on the Worcestershire sauce. I swear that is what makes this recipe so good. But now I'm going to add in about a cup of shredded cheese. This is some sharp cheddar, and I'm just going to keep on stirring that until that cheese melts down. And then lastly, I will hit it with a little bit more salt and pepper. So that is it for the filling for the shells. Now I have got a 9x13 baking dish laid out, and I'm going to pour in this 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. I filled it halfway up with water and dumped that in as well. Again, more dashes of Worcestershire sauce. That's what's going to give it so much flavor. And I'm just going to whisk that all together. And that is all the sauce you need for this recipe. So you'll need to boil up about a half a box of the jumbo shells. That will be about the perfect amount for the amount of filling. So if you have a bigger family, you may want to double it, but I'm simply just getting that stuffed inside the shells, and then I'm going to top it with some more shredded cheese, and that's going to go in the oven at 350 degrees for about 20 minutes, just until everything's kind of bubbly and that cheese is melted. Is that not beautiful? This is my plate. I served it with a Caesar side salad, and it was such a hit. There was no leftovers of these shells. These were all gone the same day. They just have such a great flavor to them, and they work so well with the pasta shells. So if you are looking for a new recipe to try for yourself or your family, let it be this one, because I'm telling you, you will not regret it. They are just so good. Next up, I'm making air fryer steak fajitas and peppers. So I'm using some sirloin steak. I picked up 2 packages of it so that I could have close to 1.5 pounds of the steak. So I'm going to get that out of the package, and I'm going to start slicing it up into thin strips. So in this clip, I was trying to show the way that the grains are running, or the lines, and you definitely want to cut in the opposite direction so that you are cutting against the grains. That is something that I have kind of recently learned, and the importance of that. It kind of confused me at first, but I finally got it down pat, and I've been using it for like all types of meat, chicken, whatever. And it definitely does help keep the meat more tender. So after I got all of that sliced up, I'm going to transfer that on over to a disposable gallon Ziploc bag, because we are going to be marinating this steak. So for the marinade, you're going to need a 1/4 cup of pineapple juice. I'm just using it from a can of pineapple. I'm also going to add the juice of a whole lime. If you aren't like crazy about lime juice, you could just use half. I'm also going to add in a tablespoon of olive oil, a tablespoon of soy sauce, a half a tablespoon of chili powder, a teaspoon of cumin, and a half a teaspoon of smoked paprika. So with my whisk, I'm just going to get that mixed together really well, and I'm just going to pour that all over the top of my steak. So I'm going to try and get all the air out of that bag, and then I'm going to seal it on up, and I'm just going to massage that into the steak very well. So that's going to marinate in my fridge while I go on about my day. You want to let it do a minimum of at least 2 hours. I believe I did mine for about 4, but you can let it go all day or overnight. Just whenever you get it prepared is fine. I did realize that I forgot the minced garlic, so I went in and added that as well, and then I set it in my fridge. So now I'm going to get my peppers prepped. So I have washed a red and green bell pepper, as you can see. I'm only going to be using half of each pepper. That's what the recipe calls for, and I find that's just what works best, because I'm pretty much the only one in the house that enjoys peppers. So everyone else is going to pick them out. So it's the perfect amount for me, but you can definitely use the whole peppers if you want to. And you can also chop up an onion. I know that's popular with fajitas, but I'm leaving that out. So I got my peppers thinly sliced, and of course I'm going to do that with the green one as well. So for the air fryer, I've got a piece of tinfoil laid down, and I'm just going to put my peppers in there. I'm going to get those sprayed with some cooking spray. I'm just using my pan, and I'm going to season those with some garlic salt and some black pepper. I'm going to cook those at 400 degrees for 10 minutes, and then when that timer goes off, I'm going to pull it out and add in that marinated steak. So I'm just using a fork to kind of spread that out a little bit better. Now, how you like your steak cooked will depend on how long you cook it for. So I do 7 minutes at 400 degrees, but it could definitely stand to go a minute or two less if you like it less done. But one thing I forgot to do was to add salt and pepper before I cooked it. It definitely needs it, so I just added it after I cooked it. I served it up with some lime wedges to squeeze over the fajitas, and I'm also going to go in with some Ortego taco sauce that we just love to tie it all together. I did use the Tortilla Land tortillas that you find in the refrigerated section. They are so good. It definitely makes a difference, and I just love this recipe. I love that it's cooked in the air fryer. I love the marinade. It is super flavorful, and this is just a meal that we don't have often, so we really enjoyed it. Okay, so this day was my dad's birthday, and I wanted to cook him dinner and take it over to his house. So I chose chicken and rice casserole. I recently made this. It's probably just a few videos back, and we just loved it, so I thought it would be perfect. So to a greased 9x13 casserole dish, I just added in 2 cans of chicken broth and 2 cans of cream of celery. And I'm just getting that mixed together until this mixture is nice and smooth. And then I'm going to add in 4 tablespoons of melted butter. Now I'm adding in my rice. This is 2 cups of white, long grain, uncooked rice that I did wash first. And I'm just getting that spread out evenly. And then I'm going to season this mixture up with plenty of salt and black pepper, as well as garlic powder and paprika. I'm sure some of y'all remember the last time I made this, my paprika was like brown, even though it was not expired. So I finally got some new paprika. So as for my chicken breast, I just seasoned those with that Lawry seasoned salt and plenty of black pepper. I used 3 chicken breasts, and I just got those cut in half to make 6 portions. As you can see, I did not butterfly them. I just cut them straight down the middle. You definitely want them thick for this recipe. Now, this tinfoil caused me a load of trouble. It is so important for this dish to use like a good quality thick tinfoil that will fit all the way across your dish. You might even want to consider doubling it up because it is so important to have a good tight seal so that that rice cooks properly. And as you can see, that is not a good tight seal. All I had were these cheap like pop-up half sheets of tinfoil, and I will never make that mistake again. I cooked this for an hour at 375, and as you can see in the middle of the dish, that rice is not fully cooked. So I ended up having to take it over to my dad's house like that, and I just finished it off in his oven, and I didn't get a clip of it. I was rushed. I was annoyed. But just know we got it done, and it did turn out delicious, and he ended up loving it. I also made him some Oreo balls because he is not a cake person. And I also sent over just some green beans that I cooked in some butter, salt, and pepper. So although this was chaotic, it ended up being really good. Lastly, we are going to end this video with a good old crock pot meal. This is going to be some smothered pork chops and potatoes, and this turned out even better than the last time I made it, and we loved it the last time I made it. So I start by searing off some pork chops in a hot skillet with some olive oil. Again, I'm just seasoning this with some Lawry seasoned salt and pepper. It's just a great seasoning for pretty much anything, and you definitely want to use some thicker pork chops for this recipe. Don't do it with thin pork chops. This was as thick as I could get it at my local grocery store, but it worked out perfectly. You could also use bone-in pork chops if you wanted to, but yeah, I'm not trying to cook it all the way through. I'm just browning the tops and bottoms of it so that it tastes a little better and looks a little better. But now I'm moving on to the sauce mixture that's going to go over the potatoes and the pork chops. So all that is 1 can of cream of chicken soup, a 1/4 cup of heavy cream, and then 1 cup of regular milk. I buy 2%, but just use whatever you buy. I'm also going to add in just a big spoonful of minced garlic. So that's it for the sauce. You definitely want to mix it until it is nice and smooth. And now I'm going to get my potatoes prepared. So I'm using some Yukon yellow potatoes. I used about 4 of them. And I have had this chopper slash slicer thing for a while and I never use it. I forget about it. So this was my first time ever using it to slice potatoes. And I was just amazed. Like, it done it so quick and easily. And they were so like paper thin. Like, I'm so excited about this. I cannot believe I've had this thing sitting in my cabinets for a while and not using it. So anyways, now I can finally start assembling the crock pot. So I sprayed it with some nonstick cooking spray, lay down my potatoes, and you definitely want to season them very well. So I'm using garlic, salt, onion powder, and pepper. The original recipe called for raw onion to be added to the potatoes. So if you like that, definitely do that. But the best way to get that really mixed in is with your hands. So after I got that done, I added half of the sauce mixture over the top, as well as about a cup of shredded cheese. And again, I'm using sharp cheddar. It's what I use in most recipes. We just really love the flavor. And now I can add those seared pork chops to the top as well as the juices. And then I'm just going to finish it off with the rest of that sauce and the rest of my cheese. Ended up probably being about a half a cup over the top. So I'm going to get my lid added on and I'm going to let this cook on low for 4 hours. I do not like to let pork chops cook over 4 hours in a crock pot because they start to dry out. At least that's my experience. But here's what it looked like when it was done. I topped everything with extra black pepper and I served it with a side of asparagus. And this turned out amazing. The last time I made this, my only complaint was the potatoes were a little bit undercooked. But where I got these sliced so thin, they cooked perfectly and so did the pork chops. So really great recipe and I highly recommend. So that is all I got for y'all in today's video. I want to thank y'all so much for watching and just for all the support this year. It's definitely not been the easiest year for me, and sometimes I have a hard time thinking that I could have done better on YouTube and put out more videos, but in reality I really did give it my best despite the things that we were faced with this year. I'm just ready to close this chapter. I am really looking forward to the new year, and here's to hoping it's a good one for all of us.